Hello and welcome to Hollywood at Home from Arizona Public Media. I'm Victoria Lucas. This week's classic comedy opens with the words, "This is a Halloween tale of Brooklyn, where anything can happen and usually does." Cary Grant stars as Mortimer, the one normal member of a charming lunatic family in director Frank Capra's Arsenic and Old Lace. Mortimer returns to his childhood home on his wedding day, which happens to be Halloween, and he discovers that the two adorable spinster aunts who raised him have spent the past years murdering old, lonely bachelors by serving them poisoned elderberry wine out of the kindness of their hearts. Also at home is Mortimer's brother, who believes he's Teddy Roosevelt and that the bodies in the basement were workers on the Panama Canal. Add in the unexpected arrival of a second brother, who happens to be a ruthless serial killer on the lam, and you have all the ingredients for a wonderfully dark, madcap comedy. By the late 1930s, Frank Capra films like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington and Meet John Doe had led audiences to expect his movies to deliver themes of social justice, in which gentle humor would be combined with love for the common man. But then, in 1941, with war raging in Europe, Capra joined the Army Signal Corps and received an officer's commission as a major. But when the Army told him to stand by for his assignment, that's Army talk for hurry up and wait, he decided to make one more film before being called up. He told his friends, "I'm not going to try to reform anybody. It'll be a picture without a sermon, a popcorn movie, and I'm going to have a lot of fun making it." He found the perfect material one night in a Broadway theater, where he attended Joseph Kesselring's play Arsenic and Old Lace. As Capra watched the audience respond enthusiastically to the black comedy, he realized it was just what he had in mind. In his words, an anything-goes, rip-roaring comedy about murder. He reckoned it could be filmed relatively quickly and cheaply, as it was essentially a one-set show. He soon learned that Warner Brothers had already snapped up film rights to the play, but that did not turn out to be a problem. Every studio in Hollywood wanted to do business with the four-time Oscar-winning director, and Warner's quickly offered a deal. The only condition was that studio chief Jack Warner wanted a major star to play Mortimer, rather than the relatively unknown actor who had played him on Broadway. So after some thought, Capra chose Cary Grant, who had recently given standout performances in comedies like Bringing Up Baby and His Girl Friday. To adapt the play into a movie, the studio hired screenwriters Julius and Philip Epstein, who would win an Oscar for Casablanca the following year, with orders to expand the role of Mortimer and tailor it to Grant's unique personality and talents. According to studio records, Warner Brothers paid Cary Grant $160,000 as his acting fee. And, as he had done before, Grant donated the vast majority of his fee to the war effort, including the British War Relief Association, American Red Cross, and the USO. For the roles of the sweet but deadly maiden aunts, Capra knew he couldn't do better than Josephine Hull and Jean Adair, the actresses who so memorably played the role on Broadway. He followed suit by casting John Alexander to reprise his Broadway role as Brother Teddy Roosevelt. Raymond Massey appears as the murderous other brother, while Peter Lorre plays Massey's not very skillful plastic surgeon. Finally, to play Mortimer's bewildered new bride, Capra cast ingenue Priscilla Lane, one of the singing and acting Lane sisters. The film was scheduled for an 8-week shoot, and cameras rolled on October 20th, 1941. Capra wanted to create what he called a mugger's ball, in which the scene stealers could run wild on the set. He encouraged the actors to improvise both dialogue and physical comedy, and often kept the cameras rolling at the end of a scene just to see what might happen. He pushed Cary Grant, a former vaudeville performer, to let loose with his performance as Mortimer arranges for one brother to go to a sanitarium, the other to go to jail, all while trying to protect his bride and prevent discovery of the bodies in the basement. Grant was worried that his performance was too broad and over the top, but audiences over the years have disagreed, with many people claiming it's one of his best. Capra made the decision to film all the scenes inside the house in chronological sequence to help the actors build their characters and performances, much as they would on the stage. With his budget limitations in mind, and knowing that time is a director's most precious commodity, he also employed an unusual directing style. He would end each day's filming by shooting a long, uninterrupted master shot of the next day's major scene. Then, when he arrived at the studio the next morning to watch dailies, he'd decide how much coverage of that master shot, such as close-ups, two shots, etc., he would need to shoot that day. Now, often this would allow him to change an actor's line reading or piece of business, and then in the editing room, insert the change without needing to reshoot the master. For Capra, this worked much better than the traditional method of lighting and shooting a master for a scene, then breaking up the set to shoot coverage, then relighting and shooting the master for the next scene, etc., etc., etc. Filming went smoothly, but with only a week left to shoot, Pearl Harbor was attacked, and 2 Signal Corps officers appeared on the set to swear Capra in. He was given 6 weeks to finish shooting and editing before reporting for active duty. Arsenic and Old Lace was produced in 1941, but it wasn't released until 1944, not because of the war, but because the studio's contract with the play's producers stipulated that the film could not be released until the Broadway run of the play ended. Well, traditionally, this would mean 5 or 6 months after it opened, so Warner Brothers had planned a September 1942 release. But the play proved to be an amazing success, running for 3.5 years and leading to frustration for the filmmakers. However, once it finally was released, Arsenic and Old Lace became an immediate and resounding success with critics and at the box office, and it has remained an audience favorite ever since. So now please sit back and enjoy this meeting of the madcap and the macabre, what one film historian calls a diabolical delight that only gets funnier as the body count rises. From 1944, it's director Frank Capra's Arsenic and Old Lace.